What happens when a lone female ranger gets tied to a tree in lion territory by men who think they own the wild? She couldn't fight back, but the lions could. What happened next flipped the entire story on its head. If you've ever met someone who talks to wild animals like their co-workers at the office, then you've probably met someone like Ellie James. Except Ellie didn't just talk to the animals, she listened. And yeah, most folks rolled their eyes when she told them lions had moods like grumpy neighbors and elephants could hold a grudge better than your ex. But Ellie? She knew. And on that particular Wednesday morning, hot, dry, and buzzing with flies like it was scripted to irritate, Ellie had already done two things before most people finished their coffee. She pulled a stray porcupine quill out of a limping hyena's paw and chewed out a tourist for throwing a granola bar at a warthog like it was a petting zoo. Classic Ellie. She wasn't out there for medals. She did the job because someone had to. And she was good at it. Maybe too good. The park had changed. Management had gone corporate. Suddenly, guys in polos and fake compassion were calling the shots. They cut patrols, ignored warning signs, and pushed for VIP experiences. Translation: let rich idiots get close enough to wildlife to smell their breath. Ellie didn't play that game. So when the third motion sensor camera disappeared from the ridge and the fourth came back smashed to pieces, she didn't wait for permission. She packed light, whistled to the birds like always, and hiked out on foot with nothing but her field journal and a quiet hunch that something was very, very wrong. About 3 miles out, past a dried-up creek bed and a sun-bleached elephant skull, Ellie noticed tire tracks. Not ranger vehicle tracks, these were too deep, too erratic. Someone had been joyriding off-road like the savannah was their backyard. Her gut tightened. She crouched, ran a hand across the tracks. Oil stain. She sniffed. Gasoline. Too recent. She didn't hear the footsteps behind her until it was too late. 2 men. Khaki gear, mirrored sunglasses, walkie-talkies clipped to their belts, but no ranger IDs. No park logos. They didn't say a word. Just grabbed her, fast, rough, professional, but not military. Not poachers either. Something in between. "Hey, you!" The blow to the side of her head wasn't enough to knock her out, just enough to make her dizzy. She kicked, bit, screamed. But they were prepared. She felt a thick strap across her wrists, then another across her ankles. "Don't make this worse than it has to be," one of them muttered. Oh, how original. They dragged her to a lone tree, a gnarled old acacia, and tied her upright like she was a sack of supplies. She caught a glimpse of their truck. Unmarked. Covered in dust, too much gear in the back. "Why are you doing this?" Ellie rasped, voice dry. But they didn't answer. One guy just stared at her for a long moment, long enough that she memorized his face, the scar on his jawline, the smirk like he thought she was a joke. Then they left. No drama, no speeches, just the engine growling and the vehicle disappearing into the brush. Ellie stood there, strapped to that tree like some twisted joke, blood pounding in her ears. The sun was merciless. Bugs were already finding her face. She wasn't scared, not yet. She was furious. They thought she'd give up? They tied the wrong ranger to a tree? Ellie tested the straps. Too tight. Cheap nylon. Military surplus, probably. Her wrists were already burning from friction. She knew how this went. She'd heard stories. Rangers who got too curious, who pushed too hard, went missing, quiet cover-ups. Tourist attractions didn't like scandals. But Ellie wasn't built for silence. She shouted, not panicked, just loud. A controlled call, deep, rhythmic, the kind that echoed across savannas, the kind the animals knew. Silence answered. Then, faint, almost imagined, came the sound of paws on dry leaves. Her eyes snapped toward the tree line. She could hear breathing, heavy, slow, watching. "Well," Ellie whispered hoarsely, "if that's you, Simba, now would be a really good time." She didn't know what was out there. She didn't know if the men were coming back. But she knew one thing. She wasn't going down quietly. Not in her park. Not today. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how this story unfolds, especially when the shadows start moving. Ellie stood tied to that old acacia tree like some ridiculous offering to the wilderness. Wrists raw, lips cracked, sweat dripping down her back like betrayal. The sun was now a dull orange coin falling behind the hills, but the heat didn't care. It stayed in the air like bad intentions. Her ears strained toward the rustling brush. That sound, it wasn't the wind. It had rhythm, purpose. She turned her head as much as she could. Nothing. But her instincts, the ones built from years of walking among beasts, were howling. Then she saw it. A flick of a tawny tail just beyond the scrub. Then another. Lions. Not one, not two. A whole pride. And let's be clear, lions don't just show up for no reason. Not this far out, not this quiet, and definitely not to visit a woman tied to a tree. Her first thought wasn't fear, it was irritation. Oh, great, as if today wasn't stupid enough already. She recognized them, not by name. She wasn't one of those Disney narrating rangers, but by scar patterns, movement, posture. The big male in the back had a hitch in his left leg. She'd seen it 2 months ago when he limped into a watering hole after a fight. She'd radioed the vet, helped track him, got him patched up without even darting him. Just her voice, slow movements, patience. Guess he remembered. The lions moved slowly, like they were thinking, like they were curious. The male kept his distance, but the lionesses circled wide. No growls, no signs of hunting, just awareness. Ellie stared at them and whispered, "You girls looking for a snack or a story?" She didn't move. Couldn't. But her heart? It was doing jumping jacks. Suddenly one lioness, the youngest by the looks of her, had crept forward. Carefully, nose low, she sniffed the air, came closer. Ellie held her breath. The lioness got within 5 feet. Saturday looked at her, blinked, then let out the softest, weirdest grunt, not aggressive, not warning, almost confused. Then something cracked in the trees, a radio signal. Ellie's whole body tensed, voices, 2 of them, men, the same ones. They were back. And this? This was where the real tension snapped into place. Because while the lions had been watching Ellie like she was a strange tree ornament, the second those men came back into view, something shifted. The big male stood, so did 2 lionesses, and Ellie saw it in their eyes. The change. They weren't confused anymore. They'd sensed something. The men were laughing, casual, arrogant. Still breathing? Thought maybe the heat would do our job for us. One of them held a camera. The other had a metal rod, the kind used to prod cattle. And Ellie? She smiled, a dry, bitter smile. You boys brought the wrong tools for this neighborhood. The camera guy froze, because behind Ellie, stepping out from the trees like a silent rumor, was the pride. The men cursed, the kind that YouTube policy wouldn't print. They backed up fast. But here's the kicker. The lions didn't charge. They didn't roar. They watched. It was like they were waiting. And Ellie, still tied, said, "Guess they don't like trespassers either." One man raised the rod. The male lion took a step forward. That was enough. The guy dropped it and bolted. The other followed, screaming nonsense into his radio. Ellie exhaled sharply. Her heart was slamming. Not from fear, from adrenaline. From the absurdity of it all. She looked at the lioness again, the same one from earlier, the young one. And then, no joke, the lioness moved behind her and began pawing at the nylon strap, clumsy, not skilled, but determined. Ellie almost laughed. "You're either the weirdest rescue team I've ever seen," she muttered, "or Karma's got a wild sense of humor." Eventually, the lioness gave up, wandered off. But the message was clear. The lions didn't come to eat. They came to witness, to stand between her and something worse. And that did something to Ellie. Something big. This is the turning point. Everything you've waited for. It's right here. Stick around to see how Ellie flips the script, and who finally answers for what happened. By sunrise, the lions were gone, silent as a prayer in a storm. But Ellie James? Still tied to that miserable old tree, bruised, burned, and more fired up than a bull in a mosquito net. Her wrists were screaming. Her throat felt like it had been sand-blasted. But her mind, razor-sharp. She didn't just want to survive anymore. She wanted names, faces, consequences. Because make no mistake, this wasn't just about her. This was about every ranger they tried to silence, every animal hurt for sport, every inch of land these fools thought was a playground. And if no one else was going to say it, fine, Ellie would. So she did what she always did. She used her brain. She remembered the nylon strap, same kind used in off-grid hunting groups, the ones that like to blur the lines between conservation and cash. They were tied to a certain private safari company that had been cozying up to park execs lately. Ellie had seen their trucks around, no license plates, just eco-friendly stickers slapped over tinted windows. They were poachers, the upscale kind, clean shirts, smug smiles, and now they'd tried to disappear her. Big mistake. It took her over an hour, but Ellie finally managed to cut one of the straps against a jagged bit of bark. She twisted, yanked, and nearly passed out when her right arm came free. But she didn't. She kept going. When she stumbled back to the ranger station, covered in dirt, scratches, and righteous fury, the new head ranger, Tom, nearly dropped his coffee. "Ellie? We thought—" She didn't wait for him to finish. "You thought wrong. Sit down." She kicked open the gear room, grabbed a satellite phone, and called someone higher up. Not the park office, not local enforcement. She went federal, Wildlife Crimes Division, people who didn't blink when words like sabotage and human endangerment got thrown around. By noon, 2 black SUVs rolled up the main road like thunder with engines. And Ellie? She had the map ready, the coordinates, the whole picture. And you know what the cherry on top was? The lions. See, turns out someone in the poacher group had posted a private brag video online a few days earlier, drone footage of lions being baited toward an abandoned Jeep. For the thrill, they'd said. It spread, fast, and Ellie's face, clear in the background. Turns out Karma's a social media manager with a badge. That afternoon, as officials moved in on a private camp deep in the north sector, Ellie stood near her truck, arms crossed, watching the clouds roll in. Tom walked over, awkward. "You're lucky to be alive." Ellie raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't lucky. I was prepared, and I had backup." Tom tilted his head. "You mean your radio?" "No," she said, nodding toward the hills. "The ones with claws." Because the truth is, those lions didn't just stumble into her rescue. They knew her. They trusted her. And maybe that's the lesson these idiots never learned. Respect is earned. In the wild, on the ground, with consistency. Not with cameras, not with bribes, not with slogans on brochures. The next morning, Ellie was back on patrol. The straps on her wrists were scabbed over, but her stride, unshaken. She passed the same tree they'd tied her to, looked up. And there, in the dirt, fresh as if carved by the wind itself, were paw prints, large, deep, lion-sized. She didn't smile, not really, but her shoulders relaxed, because in a world where people chose profits over principles and silence over action, sometimes it took a pride of lions to remind everyone who really owned the land. And Ellie? She wasn't just a ranger anymore. She was a warning. She came back stronger. Not because she had to, but because the wild remembered who stood for it when it mattered.